In Me, But Better, Olga Khazan sets out to challenge the long-held belief that personality is fixed. Most people think of traits like introversion, neuroticism, or agreeableness as unchangeable aspects of who they are. But Khazan, an introvert who found social situations difficult in her career as a journalist, asks a radical question: can we choose to become different people, and stay that way? She explores the big 5 personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These traits are the gold standard in psychological personality theory, believed to be relatively stable across adulthood. Yet, Khazan highlights emerging research that shows people can change these traits intentionally, especially with consistent effort and feedback. To test this theory herself, she undertakes a personal experiment, trying to change her own personality. Specifically, she aims to become more extroverted and less neurotic. These 2 traits, she says, were holding her back professionally and socially, and she wanted to see whether they could be reshaped through conscious behavior over time. Her methods are varied, at times humorous, awkward, and revealing. She joins an improv comedy class, attends social events she'd normally avoid, and practices small talk with strangers. Each action is chosen to push against her natural tendencies and introduce new behavioral scripts. The goal isn't to fake being someone else, but to practice being the version of herself she wants to be. Khazan supplements her personal journey with interviews from leading psychologists and researchers in the field of personality psychology. She draws on studies showing that, while the core of personality may be stable, behaviors linked to personality traits can shift, and if those behaviors are sustained long enough, they reshape the underlying trait. A key insight she shares is that change is most successful when people shift their daily routines. It's not about one-off interventions, but subtle, repetitive actions that become habits. She uses behavior tracking apps and journaling to hold herself accountable, and she encourages readers to experiment with small, manageable changes first. The emotional experience of change is also explored in depth. Trying to become more extroverted isn't just about talking more, it requires confronting deep fears of rejection, awkwardness, and not being authentic. Khazan wrestles with the idea that changing herself might mean betraying who she really is. But over time, she redefines authenticity as the freedom to evolve, not just sticking to old patterns. She discusses the concept of self-directed neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through intentional practice. The more we act a certain way, the more the brain learns that way of being, forming new neural pathways that support the personality we're trying to adopt. This scientific backing gives hope to those who feel stuck in their default traits. One of the book's strengths is how it challenges the cultural narrative around personality. Khazan critiques self-help that tells people to just be themselves, when, in fact, the self can sometimes be the source of suffering. If parts of our personality cause distress or limit our potential, shouldn't we be allowed to modify them? She argues that change, when done thoughtfully, can be a form of empowerment, not denial. She also explores the limitations of personality change. Some traits are more resistant than others, and some situations make change harder. For example, people in rigid jobs or stressful environments might struggle to maintain new behaviors. Likewise, change requires motivation and belief. It doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't work well when imposed by others. Khazan dives into the importance of feedback. We change more easily when we receive encouragement or signals that our new behaviors are effective. In her own journey, she learns to ask friends and colleagues how her changes are coming across, and she becomes more attuned to social cues. This feedback loop is essential for sustaining change over time. Relationships play a crucial role in personality change. The people around us help define who we are, and who we can become. Khazan writes about how close friends, romantic partners, or even coworkers can act as mirrors or motivators. Surrounding oneself with people who support the change increases the odds that it will stick. She addresses the myth of a true self. Often, we assume there's one real version of ourselves deep inside, and that any deviation from it is false. But Khazan argues that the self is actually a dynamic process, formed by memory, behavior, biology, and social context. This flexibility, once accepted, opens the door to transformation without shame. Over time, Khazan experiences measurable shifts. She becomes more comfortable in social settings, more confident, and less paralyzed by anxious thoughts. These changes aren't overnight, but they are real. And perhaps most importantly, she no longer feels like a prisoner of her old personality. The book ends on a hopeful note, that personality change is not only possible, but potentially liberating. We aren't sentenced to our default settings. With effort, experimentation, and compassion for ourselves, we can become who we wish to be, not perfectly, but meaningfully. Khazan's story is both deeply personal and widely applicable, offering a refreshing blend of humor, science, and humanity.